Good morning. We are ready to begin our program. Sarah Wiley is an award-winning fundraising professional, certified social media strategist, and accomplished public speaker located in St. Louis, Missouri. She works with nonprofits across the United States and Canada to raise money for important causes and helps people around the world use social media to build meaningful relationships. She is also the president of Toastmaster Plus Factor Club in District 8. Please welcome Sarah.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Tom. Thank you all for being here and starting your morning with me. Excited to be a part of our virtual TLI this year. One thing that I do want to ask everyone to do is we're going to ask people to go ahead and turn the cameras off. It is being recorded, and that'll help us keep things clean, and that'll help you hopefully be able to relax a little bit. I do want to encourage folks to use the chat. Feel free to have as much side chatter as you'd like, but to make Tom's job easier, if you're trying to ask a question that you want to get to me, put like a big Q in front of your question, and that way he'll know to actually catch that one so that we can ask it of me and know that it's not just side chatter between all of you. But we do encourage you. We're here to talk about networking. Go ahead and use the chat to network during the session if you would like to do that. I would also like to encourage everyone to use hashtag D8TLI, which is up on the screen, to do any posting that you might want to do on social media throughout the session. That will allow you all to connect with each other there and will allow me to see later what you were saying when I check my social media feed after the session. I'm going to actually stop my screen share for a moment because I would like to start this morning with a story. And so we don't need a slide in the way while I tell you a story. So let me get my slideshow off of my screen so that I can see what I am doing. So I want to talk to you first about how I came to embrace social media and a virtual space as an important piece of networking. And for me, when I was first starting to get into my profession, fundraising, I thought that social media was a thing I was supposed to leave behind. It was that thing that started to get popular when I was in college, that, was the place where people posted about the things they did for fun as kids and that they were supposed to move away from as they became, real adults in the real world. And social media was a place where you maybe waste time watching cat videos, or it was, a place where you could talk to your friends and drink on the weekends and post pictures of it, but you kept that away from your professional life, and you needed to set the phone down and be in the real world and talk to people in person if you were going to be a real professional. So that's what the intention I had was going into my first international conference. I got to attend the International Fundraising Conference. It's one of the biggest events in my field. And I was very ready to become a real adult and leave my phone in my pocket during this conference. I was just going to use my notebook to take notes. I was going to just meet people in person and shake their hand. And that was my plan. But a week before the conference actually started, we got an email from the organizers asking us to download an app, just like we were all asked to download an app today, right, for this. And the app that they wanted us to download was a way for us to keep our schedule straight during the conference. It would have a map of the conference center so we could decide, which sessions do we want to attend, and we could find the rooms as we walk around the conference center in New Orleans where the event was that year. And once I downloaded it and looked at it, there was something else going on in the app. There was something that looked a lot like a Facebook feed. And there were people posting their pictures from the event the year prior. There were people who were arriving early and posting pictures of the bars they were visiting in New Orleans before the conference started. And I'm sitting at home and scrolling through this feed and liking all of the pictures and starting to comment on some of them, trying to get to know the people that I'm going to meet in person before I get there. And the whole time I'm thinking, well, this is fun, but that's going to be a distraction. I don't want to be the person at the conference like this the whole time, looking at my phone once I'm there. But it's a good way for me to prepare beforehand. However, by the time I arrived at the conference, I was at the top of their leaderboard because I had started taking pictures of the suitcase that I was packing and taking selfies in the airport on my way to New Orleans. And all of that got me points in this app. And so there's like a top 10 list, their leaderboard within the app of the people who've been most active. And I'm number one. And now I want to stay number one. I'm feeling competitive at this point. So I'm struggling. Do I put my phone away and be a real adult and stay off of the digital space and be in person? Or do I hold on to that number one spot? And my competitive side won. So for the first day of the conference, my notebook sadly stayed in my briefcase, but my phone was in my hand all day. And there was a bit of this, but what I did was I started using my phone to take notes. So I used my little quick millennial thumbs and I would type into my phone what I was learning in the sessions and share it out on the app. And I continued to comment on people's things. And what I found by day 2 was that people were coming to me. And it might surprise you to hear this, but I have not typically been a person who considered herself popular or was probably considered popular by others. But at this conference, suddenly I felt like the popular girl, the cool kid, and people were coming up to me and talking about things that I had posted and how that had resonated for them or how it had helped them, or even just commenting on which hairstyles they hoped I would wear again during the event. And so for me, I realized that my in-person networking experience was actually augmented rather than harmed by my use of this app, which in many ways was similar to social media. And in fact, I realized as the conference was ending that a lot of people were using Twitter and LinkedIn and social media sites to do the same kind of networking that they had been doing within the app outside of the event. And so that's when I started to get active on those platforms and even went on to pursue a certification in social media strategy so that I could learn how to do that better and be very strategic with how I used my time and maybe cut back on the cat videos and do more professional networking on these spaces, on these platforms. I didn't go into the conference expecting that I was going to use the technology or even the in-person experience to meet the most important people. I was so junior in my profession at the time that I didn't know who the most important people were. So I couldn't have played that game if I'd tried. What I did go in doing was hoping to learn things from the sessions I attended and hoping to meet people and make friends. And so that's the lens I brought to it. And in just trying to make friends with whoever interested me, I ended up making connections that mattered a lot. So since that conference, that use on the app has led me to, I won prizes. I did stay on the leaderboard. Somebody did sneak up and steal number one from me, and we're still good friends. We got over that competition, but all of the top 10 folks won prizes. So I've gotten discounts on conferences in the future because of that. But also one of the people that I met at that conference, who at the time was also a very junior fundraiser, very new into the profession. She ended up putting on a TEDx event in her city in Tennessee last year and invited me to speak. So without knowing where it was going to lead, building those connections through social media led me to this amazing opportunity to give a TEDx talk. So you just never know what kind of connections will lead to, what kind of relationships are important. And so the four things that I learned from this event that we're going to talk about more in their session today are that if you want to use social media or digital spaces to network, the first thing you have to do is just jump in, just like I did. I just started posting, even though I didn't know if anybody there cared what I would say. I said it anyway. So you have to jump in. Number two, you have to be authentic. For me, that meant taking some selfies and that meant sharing what I was learning, but I was always who I am. And so we'll talk more about how we can be authentic when we show up in these digital networking spaces. The third piece is focusing on relationships. So I spoke to that a little bit already, that it's not about who do I think can do the most for me or who do I think is the most important person, but it's really about how do I build authentic relationships with the people attending. And number four is provide value. People were coming up to me, not just because they thought my selfies were cute, maybe they did, but also they were coming to me because I was providing value with the posts I was making on that app. They were coming to say thank you because they felt like what I had put in text was useful to them. So that is what we're going to talk about today. I am going to pull my slides back up and share those again so that we can get into a little bit more detail here. And forgive me because my Zoom wants to hide when I try to pull my slides up. But here, screen share, slides, present. Tom, will you confirm for me that what we're looking at is the slide itself and not the notes?
We're looking at just the slide.
Perfect.
Oh, wait,
That
no,
was,
no, I see the notes.
we see the notes. Okay, so I'm going to switch the display setting. And how about now? Is that what we want?
Perfect. You're
Okay,
good.
great. All right, so there's that hashtag again, hashtag D8TLI. Please share what you're learning. Here are those 4 steps that I just spoke about. So we want to jump in, we want to be authentic or be you, focus on relationships, and provide value. So we're going to go through each of those. But before we do, I want to back up a second and I want to ask a question. Why? Why do we want to network? Why do we want to do this in the first place? I'm assuming you have a reason because you came to a session about networking. So this is an audience participation opportunity. For those who are already familiar with the annotate feature in Zoom, you can jump right on in and start annotating this slide with your response to that question. For anyone who's not familiar, Tom, are you able to walk through that? It's hard for me to see that functionality while I have screen share on.
Sure. Well, actually, just look on view options at the top, and then you should see annotate.
Perfect. So I see a few people have found it. Business growth and development. Build brand relationships. So you should be able to switch to text and annotate. I think it defaults to draw, and text might be easier for most of us to work with. Make friends and influence people. Somebody reads the same books I do. Career growth, building business and clients, relationship strategies to promote business, get help finding resources, grow network, build my brand. You may be someone else's hero. Oh, that's beautiful. I really love that. I think that whoever wrote that is my hero. Grow network, career growth. I'm seeing some great stuff here. Find common interests. Make yourself known, right? So sometimes it's about building up our own brand. Not sure why, but you never know. That's great. Being open to the possibilities and the unknowns. Finding opportunities you never knew existed, kind of same wavelength there. Someone's here in this session because they want to understand social platforms. Learn a bigger world. Yeah, and I love that. One of the few silver linings of the difficult year that we've had is that the world is bigger now. We're able to have speakers here today from all over the world. We're able to attend and visit Toastmasters clubs all over the world. And this digital space really does allow us to network much further outside of our geographic space than would have been possible in the world that we used to live in. Paying it forward, that's fantastic. I know we probably have some folks here who might be past the point of trying to build more business, might be retired, but you can still be involved in this space and pay things forward to others. So that's a really wonderful point too. I am going to ask Tom to clear, I think you can clear all this out, right, Tom, so that we can move to the next slide without the words cluttering the next slide. Or maybe I can clear all. Ah, I can. Here we go. So now that we know why, if I can get to my next slide. Oops. Here we go. So now we know why we're going to network. The next question is, where do we take step 1? Where is it that we go when we want to jump in? And I'm going to let you guys annotate again. So using that same annotate feature, using text, tell me, where are some of the places that you think you might go to network online? What does that look like? Where are the places that you think of? I gave you one in my story, the application that goes with a conference if you happen to attend virtual conferences in your field. So those are good. LinkedIn, I thought that might be one of the first. Other Toastmasters clubs, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, my company's social media, meetings that are on Zoom. Facebook, Facebook, Facebook. I see it popping up everywhere. And somebody specified Facebook groups. That's great. Zoom, Twitter, Rotary, Chamber of Commerce, Instagram, WhatsApp, GroupMe, Microsoft Teams, push content on social media. No idea. Hey, that's great. Well, now you have an idea, right? Because everybody on this call is sharing some wonderful ideas. We're going to talk more specifically about a couple of these. Spotify and Reverb, meetup groups. Just looking to see if anybody comes up with any others that aren't already on the screen. Boxer, Toastmasters. Great. Let's see here. I'm going to clear these out again. These are great. And you guys did manage to touch on all of the ones I'm going to go into in more detail. Online games, somebody gets points for that one because I have a story about that in just a moment. Okay, so I'm going to clear these out. We're going to stop with the annotating now because unfortunately I do have to move to the next slide. All right, so now that we know where to start, we have some ideas. We're going to talk in a little bit more detail about a couple of these. Come on, computer. Here we go. So the point that I want to make is that anywhere that people get together can be a place that you can network. Networking is simply building relationships, and we can do that anywhere that we can talk to other people. And I love that somebody actually put online gaming because that was one I didn't think of myself before I gave a presentation similar to this to a group of undergraduate students last year at the University of Missouri St. Louis. And one of them brought that up. They said, oh yeah, like World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, we could network there. And it never would have occurred to me, but it's absolutely true. You can network anywhere that you can talk to other people, and your spaces might be spaces that I don't personally enter. We might all have different places that we do that. And so get creative about where you go.
Hey, we had one question.
Yes.
Is Spotify a social media? I thought it was just listening to music and podcast.
I would be curious if the person who wrote that wanted to share a little more detail. I have not seen a way to use Spotify for anything other than that, but sometimes when I present, I get to learn a lot as well myself. So I don't know if somebody was thinking about that as a place where maybe they host a podcast and maybe that leads to more interaction, but I would love for the person who suggested Spotify to maybe use the chat to share a little bit more.
Somebody said you are able to comment and chat, and I guess that's where that comes from.
Okay, great. So I think that, yes, exactly that. Anywhere that you think that you can interact with people, if you're finding that people are interacting back and forth, then that's perfect. Use that space too. So thank you for teaching me something because I didn't know that I could use Spotify that way. The next point I want to make is balance, because at this point, I suspect some folks are feeling a bit overwhelmed. We just had a whole bunch of, what is TikTok? What is it? Should I be online gaming now? Do I need to jump into Spotify comments? Like, where do I go? Where do I need to be? And the fact that we can jump in anywhere we want doesn't mean we have to jump in everywhere that we can. Just the same way that we don't have to attend every single in-person networking event, right? Like we know that they exist. We know that there's Toastmasters and there's Rotary and there's Chambers of Commerce and there's all of these places that in the before times and hopefully again soon in the future, there's all sorts of in-person physical networking events, but we don't have to attend every single one. The same thing applies here in the social space. We don't have to be on every single platform. We just need to pick the ones that are going to be the most valuable for us and for who we want to reach and the conversations we want to have. So the top three that I want to talk about today are LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, because those are ones that people are probably most familiar with, and they're the ones that I personally have had the most success with. So LinkedIn is sort of like being at the office. It's being in that conference center. It's the place where you're sort of wearing your suit and tie, you're all dressed up, and you're ready to talk just about business. And there are certain topics that you probably don't bring up while you're at the office. And so you don't bring those up probably while you're on LinkedIn either. And to use LinkedIn well, there are a few strategies that you want to employ. First, you want to create a boss profile to do boss networking. And so you want to make sure that you filled out all of the sections and that you're really selling yourself and telling your story well. Your profile is sort of your resume and your business card and more all rolled into one. So it's important to make sure that it's good. The second thing you want to do is start engaging with other people's content. And I intentionally put this before posting your own content because when you walk into a room at a networking event, you don't just start talking, right? You go to other people and you engage in like a one-on-one conversation with them. And then eventually people want to hear what you're saying and maybe you have a big group around you and you can talk and you can instigate other things. So starting with engaging with other people and then starting to post your own content. And a pro tip when you go to post content on LinkedIn, you want to tag other people if you're talking about them, particularly if you're saying something good about them. And to tag someone, if you're not sure how to do that, it's just that little like at symbol that we use in email addresses. You just type that symbol and then start typing a name, and it will actually tag them. So that way they'll know you were talking about them and their followers will see that you were talking about them. And so it increases the audience you're reaching, and it can be a way to make somebody feel really good if you share something that they wrote or something that they said and say something nice about it. Other things you can do on LinkedIn, you can join LinkedIn groups. So you may or may not be familiar with how groups work. They work about the same way on Facebook as LinkedIn. So you can search for a group and find a group where maybe people are having conversations about something that's very relevant and interesting to you. And LinkedIn lets you publish articles. So if you have some amount of expertise in something, you can write your own article and publish it right there on LinkedIn. It's very easy to do. I've done it a few times. So that's something to explore, especially if part of your goal when you're using your social media is to kind of make yourself this expert that people come to. Writing an article is a great way to establish your credibility. Twitter. Twitter is kind of like going out to the bar after the conference is done for the day. It's a bit more wild. The conversations can go in a few more directions, but it's sometimes the best networking that we get because here we get to really know each other when we start talking about things that we might not have wanted to talk about while we were still in our full suit and tie at the office or at the conference. Now we're kind of, letting our hair down a bit or loosening the tie, whatever it is. And so I have found Twitter to be an incredibly valuable place, but it was a much harder place to figure out. It was much more overwhelming when I first got involved. So the first thing you want to do if you're getting on Twitter is to start following people. Find people you think are interesting, follow them. And also follow hashtags. So hashtags, it's that little like number or pound sign, hash sign as they call it in other parts of the world. And you just look for hashtags that are relevant to what you do. For me, fundraising, marketing, social media, I can look for those hashtags and jump into conversations that people are having about those topics, even if I don't know them. A great one today is hashtag D8TLI. All of us can use that on Twitter or any social media platform as we post today, and we can have conversations with each other about this event, even though we might not have known each other before the event and might not have already been connected or following each other. What you want to do as you follow people and follow hashtags is just jump into those conversations. Twitter is a very public platform, and so people really expect that you're going to just jump in and start talking to them. So this is not a time to wait for an invitation. You can also try Twitter chats. These can be difficult to find, but they can be really useful. So in marketing, one of the ones that I really like is a weekly chat called Chat About Brand. And if you just look for hashtag Chat About Brand, there's an organizer who every single week at the same time, it's like every Tuesday at the same time, she posts a series of like 6 different questions. And so there's all this interaction and it's like a scheduled time to get together and talk about, in that case, branding. And so you can search and try to find Twitter chats related to whatever your field is and have conversations about those. You can also start conversations on Twitter. This becomes easier as you grow a following or if you start using a popular hashtag that people are following. And it can be a lot of fun. I've had conversations about my work where I've said, hey, I'm struggling at work today with like, how do I handle this weird situation? And I've had a bunch of other people who are also in the same profession say, well, here's my advice, or here's my advice, or, even, do you want to hop on the phone real quick or on Zoom real quick and let's talk about it? So I could get help with that professional thing. I've also used it just to have fun conversations and get to know people better. The other night, I posted a question about who people's favorite pirate is and got to know a lot about which pirate movies the people who I'm professionally connected to enjoy in their downtime. And it helped us grow closer and have the kind of conversation we might have had over beer if we were at a bar after an event. And Facebook. This one is a very popular platform that many people are on. It feels a bit more personal to many of us. Facebook feels like kind of actually inviting people back into your home, and we may not always be ready for that. So, depending on the personality of the people involved, sometimes Facebook is a place where people actually do send each other, connection requests and become friends. But some people aren't comfortable with that. However, Facebook groups allow you to sort of connect without being connected. So it's a way to get together without actually jumping into each other's homes and seeing maybe the pieces people want to keep private. And so you guys, I'll share these slides. These are actually clickable links. District 8 Toastmasters has a Facebook group. And so it's a fantastic place to talk to other Toastmasters in the district and have conversations about what we're working on and how Pathways works, or maybe we're trying to get through a pathway and need to give an extra speech and want to go as a guest to another club to knock that out. Whatever we want to talk about related to Toastmasters, that group is there for that. Toastmasters International also has a group, and I've had a lot of fun being part of that group and learning how people might do things differently in other clubs, and even getting opportunities to visit clubs in other countries or invite folks from other countries to come and visit the Plus Factor Club where I'm president. And so, in addition to Toastmasters groups, you can probably find Facebook groups related to whatever your business is or whatever other interests you have, and they're a great place to connect. All right, so now we've talked a bit about some places we can jump in. How do we do it? I talked about at the conference, I would take selfies and post selfies in the app. What other kinds of things might you share? If you're going to share, what might that look like? What are things that you might post in a group or on your page? So go ahead and use that annotate again and share some of your ideas. Or maybe everybody's just also going to share selfies. Maybe that's the in thing that we've all decided to do. Ha. I love the it depends answer. Like, that truly is always the right answer, isn't it? Pictures that are not selfies, right? Yeah. So some people who aren't millennials do that, right? Videos, especially great if you're in public speaking and trying to show off your public speaking abilities. Recently read articles, webinars, trainings, etc. I love that. I do that a lot myself. Interesting articles, trends, something you just learned. I hope some of you are learning things right now and sharing those with the hashtag D8TLI on your social media. Share your opinion. Share my cat helping me pack for my trip. I love that so much. Invitations to upcoming events, comments on a speaker or key thought. Share what you're doing, right? Like, not even what I've gotten out of it yet, but just like, I'm here, right? This is what I'm doing right now. Share your notes like I did with the conference app. Share something you learned. Share quotes. I love that. I know somebody who does that very consistently on LinkedIn. And so I've come to expect that I know that if she posts, it's going to be an interesting, encouraging, uplifting quote. And I look forward to seeing those. So these are great. So you all have some ideas. So you can pick a place to jump in. You've got some thoughts on what you can do as you jump in. So let's clear these out also. And your Instagram post with a humorous hashtag. Yes, that can work really well. All right, I'm going to clear these out. We're going to move to the next slide. So we want to be authentic. I mentioned being authentic, but what does that mean? I think authenticity means that we can put on some makeup, we can talk ourselves up and make ourselves look a little better than we might actually feel. Many of us are fighting imposter syndrome, and so it feels like we have to put on a little bit of makeup to kind of fool ourselves into thinking that we can even talk ourselves up in the way that we want to when we're trying to build our brand online. But what we want to avoid is putting on a mask. And I mean the kind of mask in the picture, because right now I do want you to put on a mask over your mouth and nose if you go out in public. But please do avoid putting on a mask that hides who you are. We want to be ourselves. We can be the best version of ourselves. We can make ourselves look as good as we can, but without being someone else. It's very important that who we are in the digital space is who we are offline as well. It's always the best compliment that I can get when somebody who's first met me through social media or through the app at the conference sits down and has a conversation with me and does not feel surprised. They feel like I am the person that they thought I was from that digital experience that we already had together. So that's the goal with authenticity. Now, authenticity does not mean that we have to share every piece of ourselves. Our goal should be selective authenticity. And so I think of this as, there's all these different doors to different pieces of who any one of us is as a person. And we want to really think about, as we get into networking, whether it's online or offline, what are the doors that we're really trying to push people through? What are the things we really want to be known for? And we want to make sure that that's what we spend the majority of our time talking about. So for me, that's fundraising, that's marketing, that's social media, that's public speaking, that's networking. Those are doors that I really want to make sure I keep wide open, and that those are the topics that I really want to be known for. There may be other topics that I don't hide. It's not a secret, but it's not that main thing I want to be known for. So for me, that's things like the fact that I love vampires. I'm not going to post about that every day. I'm not going to bring that up in every conversation, but I'll throw it in occasionally because it's interesting and it's fun for me. We may also have doors that we want to keep very tightly shut. For some people, keeping their children, off of those public spaces is very important to protect their children's privacy and safety. For me, a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with infertility. And in that moment, for that first year or so, as I went through that process, that was a door I wanted shut so tight. I didn't even want to talk to my extended family about it, much less people on the internet. For me, at this point, I'm telling you about it right now. It's no longer a door I feel the need to keep as tightly shut. But at any given moment, most of us probably have something that's so personal that it's not a piece we want to share. Or perhaps we have opinions that we feel are contentious to others, and we don't want to share that part of ourselves in these spaces where we're interacting with people that we might want to do business with. For others, maybe our business is in and of itself contentious and we do want to share it. So it's very personal what those pieces are. But I think it's important for each of us to think about, what are those things that I want to be really known for? What are those things that I'll share a little bit of that? And do we have things that we want to keep to ourselves? And we do want to remember that whenever we're on the internet, it's never truly private. So if we have those things we want to keep private, we want to be careful to do so. All right, so relationship building. Picture the kinds of conversations that you might have at an in-person event, and those are the kinds of conversations that you want to have online. And when we think about having conversations online, think about commenting on other people's stuff, think about tagging them, like we talked about. Think about sharing things that we see. So yesterday, a colleague of mine wrote an amazing article about some specific thing happening in the nonprofit sector. And I shared it on all of my platforms, and I tagged him so that he can see that I shared it, and he can respond if people comment on my post so that he can continue to be involved in that conversation. So you can do that. When you want to strengthen a relationship, just the same way that we don't do all of our networking in a big crowded room during a conference event, the real stuff happens after the big crowded room. It happens when we schedule a follow-up and meet one-on-one, whether that's in a coffee shop or whether that's on Zoom. So think about using direct messages in social media platforms to start to move conversations offline. I've been trying to do a lot of that this year, where I just reach out to somebody. We've had so many great conversations on Twitter. Can we hop on Zoom for 30 minutes? I would love to actually see your face and talk to you and just continue that conversation. Or sometimes it's a more targeted, I actually have something I want from you kind of thing. I would like 30 minutes of your time because I am trying to do a thing that I see you doing really well, and I want to know more about that. So we can think about having those one-on-ones and moving those off of just social media relationships. Now, when we do that, on LinkedIn specifically, sorry, I'm having trouble with my mouse. I see specifically on LinkedIn a lot of challenge that people have with how to send these personal requests to connect and what it looks like to jump into somebody's message inbox. So here's a couple of samples. These are not word for word, and they're not really from anyone named John or Jane, but I get a lot of messages along the lines of this one from John on the left. Hi, Sarah. I help companies just like yours find more customers. Do you have 10 minutes free this week to talk? I used to get this message when I worked for a nonprofit. We didn't have customers. This guy clearly hadn't thought about who I was. This is not somebody I knew or had any connection with. And I get messages like this a lot. It's very clear that they're just sending the same message to a whole bunch of people, hoping to make sales. That's the wrong way to do things. Instead, look at this example from a hypothetical Jane. Hi, Sarah. I loved the blog post you shared last week, and it gave me a few great ideas to try. I'd like to stay in touch here. So this is somebody who's not asking for anything and who's making it clear that she knows why she's reaching out to me. If you're going to connect with somebody new on LinkedIn, I highly recommend a more personalized message if they're not going to know you. If you didn't just like meet at an event or have a whole conversation somewhere, send a message so they know why you're asking them to connect. And don't make it something where you ask them for something immediately if this is like your first contact with them. So we want to be really, really personal with these things. And provide value. So we talked about how in the app, providing value for me meant not just taking selfies, but actually saying something that was useful. So if I was at a vendor's booth, I didn't just take a selfie, I took a selfie with their product and talked about why it was interesting to learn about what they were there to sell. If I was in a session at the conference, I would share on the app, this is what I'm learning right now, so that other people could learn it too. Providing value can fall into 4 buckets. People come to social media to be entertained, to be inspired, to be educated, and to be convinced. Maybe they don't come to be convinced, but that may be one of the goals that you have. So knowing that that's your goal in providing value is to do some mixture of entertainment, inspiration, education, or convincing folks of things. What kinds of content might you share? So we covered this a little bit, right? We talked about you can share articles that provide, interest and entertainment. You can share videos that you make, right? Like you could record a 2-minute video of yourself giving information or giving something humorous. You could use GIFs. I use GIFs a lot on Twitter. We have a whole conversation sometimes among other professionals in my field where it's just like all of us trying to find the best GIF to throw back at one another, or GIF if you pronounce it wrong. So think about how you can do that mixture of things and what content you can use to do that. All right, I am going to open it up for questions and answers. I think we've got a little bit of time for that, and I'm hoping, I haven't been able to monitor the chat, but I'm hoping that there are some questions there. So start typing them if you haven't already. As we get those questions ready, I do want to share a piece of homework for you all. I would like to encourage you to email me, and my email address is here, sarah@sarahwilleyllc.com. And this is what I want you to share with me. One place that you're going to jump in. We talked about a lot of them, and we talked about avoiding overwhelm by picking one. Maybe it's a platform you're already on that you're going to use more. Maybe it's a new platform that you're going to try. And tell me one action that you plan to take this week. One thing that you're going to do between now and next Saturday on that platform. And I would love for you to share with me one more thing that you want to learn about that we didn't get to cover today, that you might be doing some extra research on your own, or that I might even be able to point you to a resource for. One other thing I want to let you know, I have a link here on these slides that you can use to download a free do-it-yourself guide that I offer to help you make that boss LinkedIn profile. So if you don't feel great about yours and you want just a little bit of guidance on how you can improve it, that's a resource that I'm offering to you for free. I can throw that link into the chat for you as well, because you won't be able to click through the slides here, but we can share the slides after as well. Also, I am doing a giveaway. So if you respond and do this homework and respond to me by email, and or if you post on social media today using hashtag D8TLI, I'm going to do a drawing at the end of the day and pick 2 people to get a free LinkedIn assessment with me, where I'll actually walk through your personal profile and help you make improvements. So I'm doing that for 2 people. You can get up to 2 entries by doing both of those activities. And with that, Tom, help me out. What questions are people asking? I'm going to actually
Sure.
turn off the screen
Do
share
you
too.
have a story of how you got a guest spot a podcast to promote because of Twitter?
Is that from Chris?
It just says, oh yes, it is.
Yeah, so I have a couple of those actually. I love being a guest on podcasts, and the first podcast that I was ever a guest on was actually because of a conversation in a Facebook group. It was a Facebook group specifically for nonprofit people, and somebody asked in that group, what are people's goals for the year? It was like close to the start of the new year a few years ago. And what are people wanting to do? And I said, I really want to be on a podcast. I've never done that. It sounds pretty cool. And somebody said, oh, I have one. Let me connect with you. And so that's how I did my first podcast guest slot. I have on Twitter had 2 opportunities. One was completely random, a person who attended a marketing conference that I also attended, who had I connected with because we both kept using the events hashtag. A few months later, posted that he had a last minute cancellation on his podcast and was anyone interested in being a guest. And I was sitting in the parking lot at the veterinarian's office with nothing better to do. And so I responded and said, sure, what do you want me to talk about? And luckily, his podcast was just people telling their stories. It was like perfect. I just had to talk about myself. There's no preparation needed. And so I got to do that. The third example is a member of my Toastmasters club has a podcast, the Define Yourself podcast, where people with disabilities discuss how their disabilities affect their professional lives and personal lives and how they move past that and embrace those limitations or move beyond them. So I was able to speak about my own situation with my own disabilities on that podcast.
Okay, so we had a question from Sarah. Where did she get the social media strategy certification?
That is from the National Institute for Social Media, NISM. And I have found it super valuable. It's more focused on if you run a business account. So the primary audience that they're teaching to is speaking to what do you do if you have a company and you're trying to like run those accounts, and uh, a lot of the content also made some sense in terms of personal branding. And they do a lot of free webinars, which sometimes cover a variety of different subtopics and can be great even if you don't want to pursue a whole certification or pay for certification.
Okay, great. Now, Chris Mitchell wrote, I'm not sure this is a question. Sarah did assignment on MIEN and it really helped. It's well worth it. So maybe she's promoting
That,
it.
that might be the webinar that I did for NISM, because I know Chris
Oh,
attended
okay.
that for me. And it was specifically talking about fundraising with social media when
Uh-huh.
I gave that session.
Okay. Let's see. Any other questions here? Or somebody put, oh, is there a tutorial on Twitter or some other social platform?
There probably are some tutorials out there. I don't have one in particular that I can recommend. I am hoping to create a few. So, shameless self plug, if you sign up for my email list and get that do it yourself guide to your LinkedIn profile, I am trying to work on some of that myself and would love to make sure that you get to hear about
Okay.
it.
Chris Mitchell responded LinkedIn.
What about LinkedIn,
No, I
Chris?
mean that I think that was an answer. There's a
Oh,
tutorial on Twitter on LinkedIn, she said. I think
oh,
that's what she's
okay.
saying. All right. Do you recommend creating separate accounts on the same platform for different purposes?
I love that question. Thank you for asking that. It looks like Joe asked that. Um, It depends. Like I said, that's my favorite answer.
Maybe.
Specific to Facebook, let me say on Facebook, their intention is that there's one profile per person, and it's technically a violation of their terms of service to have separate personal profiles. However, it's a common practice, and there are some great reasons that people do it. So, the way Facebook works, if you are in social media management or you're managing even like your Toastmasters page, uh, you've got your personal profile, and then you have to be logged into that to use your business accounts, which can be a pain because it becomes very hard to separate your personal and your professional, especially if like your job is to manage social media. So there's a lot of desire that people have to be able to separate it. There's also a lot of desire to be able to have my like, here's Sarah Willie, the professional, and I'm talking to you on Facebook, just, professional to professional, and I'm not sharing pictures of like my personal life or my political views or things like that. Some people want to be able to have a separate profile to have those other conversations, connect with family. And unfortunately, Facebook officially says don't do that. Some people choose to take the risk that they won't get caught and get in trouble for it and create too, because it does make their life easier. So I would say, on Facebook, proceed with caution, but make the decision that feels right for you. If you feel like there are two pieces of you that are so different that you really want to be able to have both of those there. For the other platforms, I think it's fine. I find it personally difficult to manage that many, and I find that for me personally, there's no part of myself that I feel is closing a door that I really wanted to walk through if I share it. So if you're following me on Twitter, you're going to see my politics. You're also going to see what's going on with me professionally. And occasionally you're going to hear about vampires or pirates. And you're going to see lots of pictures of my cats. But for some people, it might make sense to have two separate Twitter accounts, one that you can use to talk about, politics. Sometimes it becomes an activist tool, depending on, how engaged you are in that. And maybe it's important to you for your own profession and where you're at to not have that be associated with the account that you're using for your professional life. So it's really a personal decision about what's manageable and what's going to help you stay where you need to stay and meet the goals you're trying to meet.
Right. We had a request to repeat the assignment and maybe show the slide.
Yes, I can put that slide back up. And let me see if I can even open the chat and I can type into the chat for you. Email me at.
Someone asked if you get credit for this session. You do not, the credits, this is elective. You only get credit for officer training sessions.
Mhm.
And then another one is, my firm just rolled out MS Teams. How can we use social media practices to use MS Teams to our best advantage?
Um, so I think Microsoft Teams is a really interesting platform and it has a lot going on. So, one thing you can do is just use it to sort of replace the water cooler conversations that you would have had in person if your team is still virtual. In my last role, we had Microsoft Teams, and I would use it sometimes just to reach out to a coworker about random things and just have random conversations that didn't necessarily directly relate to work. I think even the video, right? Like schedule a team lunch using it to get together with your team and have conversations that way. For me, those were kind of the more social ways that I used it when I had access to it, and I found that useful.
Okay. And then let's see, Chris asked, please share a link to subscribe to your newsletter.
I can do that. I'm gonna have to stop sharing so I can get to it.
Another thing is, we're about ready to, it's 9:50, so not much time, but
Yeah.
what do you suggest to do about social media and your employee policies?
Well, first of all, don't
Employer,
break your policies. Make sure that whatever you do is in line with them. So if your company has a policy that you either do or don't post about certain things, make sure that you follow those. I find that a lot of companies are pretty lax about actually writing policies, which is unfortunate because it leaves you subject to, well, there's no written policy, but then suddenly somebody cares what you did or didn't do. But yeah, I mean, I have one friend who works for a public radio station, and so she cannot post on any of her platforms ever about politics in any way. She just can't, and she can't do certain things offline in person related to politics either. So sometimes there are rules that make sense for the company that you're with, the business that you're in. So make sure that you follow whatever those policies are. if there is no written policy, you could ask for clarification or ask to write one if you felt really ambitious and wanted that security, or you could just do what you want to do and hope that people are good with it and kind of ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
Okay, someone asked for the slide deck, a link to the slide deck.
I don't have a link to it, but I think if I share it
You
with,
can share the file in chat if you'd like. Now, the other thing I will be doing is in the next day, this is being recorded. We
mhm,
will post it on the District Gate website under the YouTube channel. So
mhm.
you can see the whole presentation online.
See, I had it
And
saved as
if
a
you want to
PDF, so let me
share,
try to
yeah, if
upload
you can
that.
share, you can upload that and you can do that. All right, it is 9:51.
There we go.
That will
It's in the
close
chat.
things. There it is on chat. We thank you for attending. Sarah, appreciate all your insight because this is a very popular and social media does play a role in this world. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, like it or not, it's here. So you
It's
can
here.
choose to
We
embrace
have
it
to
like I did.
deal with it.
Yeah. So thank
So,
you all so much for your engagement and for being here. And I truly hope to follow up with each of you. Email, social media, it's there.
okay, thank you.